real situation. This is the time. Heed all warnings. Ensure that you shelter in place, you hunker down.
Our Ginger Z on the ground in the Crescent City.
Right behind me, the whipping winds of Hurricane Ida on Canal Street, the site of usually the Mardi Gras parade. You have dancers lining these streets, but now lined streets with boarded up buildings and floodgates. Not because they think the levees look cold, but because of the flash flood threat.
Officials tonight keeping a close eye on the pulse.
There's a lot of focus on the city's upgraded levees, but there's also a lot of concern about the floodwater that could accumulate right here within the protected area. The city's pumps will no doubt be put to the test.
In New Orleans East, outside the levee protection system, storm surge inundating streets. President Biden meeting with FEMA officials late today. The agency deploying 2,400 employees to the region.
We're going to put the country's full might behind the rescue and recovery, and I mean that.
Hospitals already packed with COVID patients, now sheltering in place. Emergency staff like Dr. Emily Masumi riding out the storm.
The elevator shafts are literally shaking as I'm going from unit to unit. I think that's all we need.
Ida knocking out power to hundreds of thousands of customers, a number officials say will grow. Utility companies warning the outages could last several weeks.
And we'll still be rebuilding.
And tonight, as our Matt Gutman was interviewing Louisiana's Lieutenant Governor, he received a call from Grand Isle shrimper Dean Blanchard, who had evacuated.
Your seafood business is gone?
It's pretty much gone. It's another Katrina, but I think it's worse than Katrina, really.
Before the storm hit, New Orleans governor made the point that this is not the same state it was 16 years ago during Katrina. And so far, some of the figures here in New Orleans, everything appears to be holding. David?
And that is good news. Victor Kendall leading us off tonight. Victor, thank you. This, of course, is just the beginning of this hurricane. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z, also live in New Orleans. So, Ginger, take us through this tonight. What to expect in the hours ahead?
Ginger, David, Canal Street here. We've had 83 mile per hour gusts. You can see the sign right behind me, that steel one, ripping debris flying down the street. And gusts are going to get rowdier. We will see 90 to even 100 mile per hour gusts here in New Orleans. And we're not near the core of the storm. It's going over Homer right now. You can see extreme wind warnings that extend up to the west side of Lake Pontchartrain. Those tornado watches all the way to Destin and Pensacola, including Mississippi and Alabama coast up to Hattiesburg. Here's what we're going to have to deal with. And timing this out, the next couple of hours, this has been a stubborn storm. Now, the second lowest pressure to ever make landfall in Louisiana, by the way. It will stay only for a bit, but go down to 3 and 2 as it passes Baton Rouge, getting into Mississippi still as a hurricane by tomorrow morning. Look at that. You wake up Monday morning and you're saying, wow, we're still dealing with Hurricane Ida in southwestern Mississippi with Hattiesburg getting those outside winds. Then it stays a depression. Hard hit central Tennessee from those flash floods a couple weeks ago, getting flash flood watches now. Flash flood potential all the way up to Pittsburgh as it hits a stationary front. David, this is a storm we're going to be talking about through the midweek and unfortunately throughout history.
All right, Ginger Z, you and the team stay safe. I know those wind gusts are very dangerous, so get back under cover. We do appreciate it. And as we mentioned, hospitals already full with COVID patients sheltering in place during the storm. I spoke with Dr. Mark Klein, Doctor-in-Chief of Children's Hospital of New Orleans, just moments ago. Dr. Klein, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Of course, we view going into this hurricane that many of the hospitals there in New Orleans were going to have to shelter in place. How are you doing so far? I know the power has gone out in part of the hospital.
We're doing reasonably well, David. We've got some water leaking in. We're without city power, but our emergency generators have kicked in and our patient care areas are all secure.
I know you're treating children, obviously, many of them with COVID, some with the inflammatory disease that we have reported on here, the symptoms of that inflammatory condition. How are the children doing tonight, particularly the ones on ventilators? You've been able to keep them up and running, obviously, with ventilators or the power that is still on?
Yes, as chaotic as it is outside, and it's a pretty rough afternoon out there, as everyone knows. Things are going according to plan in the hospital here. We have a team that is hard at work and doing a great job taking care of the kids, and everything is stable.
One of the things that struck me, I know many of the doctors have small children of their own. Many of them evacuated them to Atlanta and then came back to stay at this hospital to ride out the storm of the patients.
The really inspiring aspect of this, David, these are the same doctors that have been physically and emotionally exhausted taking care of children with COVID and a multitude of other medical problems over the past number of months. And and they're back at it today, giving 100%. So we've been locked down inside this building since about 6:30 or 7 o'clock this morning, and we'll be here for the duration. And it's just remarkable that these young doctors will leave their homes and their families and get them out of harm's way, but then come back to help other people's children.
Dr. Reno, every hurricane, every storm is different, but so many Americans remember, I certainly do, wading in the water to get to Charity Hospital after Katrina 16 years ago. So far, it would sound like the hospitals are faring okay in New Orleans.
We certainly hope so, David. You know, we've had a rough couple of months with the COVID surge, and this was probably the last thing in the world we needed, but here it is, and we'll deal with it, and we'll get through it.
All right, our thanks to Dr. Klein and to all of our doctors and nurses and frontline workers staying at work, riding out this hurricane. And of course, the concern at this hour, the calls now coming in for help. And ABC's chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, in Baton Rouge tonight. Matt, I know you spoke with the police chief in Grand Isle, Louisiana tonight, where some chose to stay and are now trapped. What have you learned?
David, the police chief has been there for over 6 years, his whole life. He's weathered major hurricanes before, but he says this is the worst he's ever seen. In fact, it's still so bad that they haven't been able to go out and survey the damage. They expect that there are still people trapped, that they will have to execute some rescues, but his major concern right now, in addition to sparing those people, is that Grand Isle may be cut off. There's a single road leading to that spit of land. They don't have electricity, they don't have running water, both he and others from that community tell me they are concerned about the future of Grand Isle. David.
All right, we'll be watching that into the night. Our thanks to Matt Gutman, Ginger Z, Victor Kendo, all in the storm zones tonight. We're going to have much more on Hurricane Ida tomorrow morning on Good Morning America.
Took out 2 high-level ISIS-K members, a planner and a facilitator, and injured a 3rd fighter. The fact that 2 of these individuals are no